isn't about the presidency. We need to win everything. We need to win school boards. We need to win state legislatures. We need to win dog catcher. And we have to hold those who lied to us for the past 5 years accountable for their lies.
That is an outstanding message. I love that Don Jr. is spreading it like wildfire. Joining me now, host of Triggered, Don Jr. himself. Don, I love that. I love that we're getting smarter and better about that, and that someone with your platform is talking about this more. It's fine to have a MAGA hat on. That's great. Good for you. But if you're sitting out all the local elections, then Donald Trump takes the White House. No help, no backup, can't get anything done. Again, I love that we're spreading this message out there.
No, hey man, if you're me and you go through the stuff that I've gone through, whether it's me personally during the Russia stuff, where apparently I was guilty of treason, a crime punishable by death, or a $500 million fine to our company for paying back loans on time with interest. I'm still trying to figure that one out. Or 34, 37, whatever, felony convictions for my father. We're living in kangaroo court times. This is gonna be a controversial take. I don't know that I want to win the presidency if you don't have these other things, because I get the pleasure of being probably on the front lines of that nonsense for another 4 years. So we do have to get involved. But the part about accountability is really important too. You have people in media, in tech, in government on the Democrat side. They lied to us everything. Not even the past 4 or 5 years. Frankly, I got that wrong. It's really the last 8 years. It started off with Russia collusion, because I guess Trump was colluding with Russia because he needed the money. I don't know, but it didn't matter. They ran with this like gospel. There's numerous senators that are up for election. John Tester in Montana. You got Sherrod Brown in Ohio running for Senate. They vote with Joe Biden 100% of the time. They're totally complicit in covering up the incompetency there. And they want the American people to reelect them to one of the highest governing legislative boards in the country. Is there ever going to be account? They lied to the American people. They told us he was competent. They told us he was smart. The adults were going to be back in charge. The media, Joe Scarborough gets on TV and he says, this is the finest Joe Biden we've ever seen in like 7,000 years of Joe Biden in government. This is the smartest and finest. I'm like, the guy is a vegetable. You as an upstanding American citizen, Jesse, as a patriot, as a veteran, they don't want to have an AR-15. But they'll give the nuclear football to a vegetable? This is not good messaging. This doesn't make any sense. And again, there has to be a price to be paid for it, or they're going to keep doing it to the American public.
They will. You know what? I don't even know if I should ask this question, because I should know, but I've never been able to figure it out. I grew up in Montana. My folks moved us there when we were 10 years old. That's where I graduated high school. It's where I joined the Marines from. We've had Max Baucus, now John Tester, and I realize you have these commie hippie places like Bozeman where I grew up, but Montana is red. Why do these losers like Tester stay in places? We need that Senate seat, Don. We need it. I know we need it. What's with Montana? Explain this to me.
Oh, Montana's interesting. I was actually with a buddy of mine, and the only reason I say this is because he said I could. I said it publicly out there. Josh Smith, he runs Montana Knife Company, great patriot, great American business. And he's like, John Tester's like my godfather. I was like, what? I was like, how is that possible? He goes, hey, you know what? And there was a time where John Tester was actually like sort of believed some of these things. Sure, he was a libtard and he votes with Biden 100% of the time, but he got to Washington, D.C. He's the #1 recipient of special interest dollars in Washington. So he's sort of like a fake farmer, but he does the farmer thing, ho-hum. He shows up in blaze orange every once in a while, even though many years he's never even held a hunting license. He plays that game like he's one of them. They sell it to him, but then he goes to D.C., and like so many others, Jesse, he gets corrupted by the swamp. So you go from being a guy that, like I said, a good friend of mine, super conservative guy, he's like, hey man, there was a time that he was like that. Now I want to get my stepfather, whatever it is, godfather, out of office, because he became everything he probably despised. He's been in there forever. He's taking all the special interest money. He votes with Joe Biden nearly 100% of the time, but then he'll run ads like, I'm for you, Montana. It's like, well, that's not Montana. You can't be for Montanans and their values and their lifestyle and everything they stand for while simultaneously voting 100% of the time with Joe Biden. That doesn't work.
Don, let's talk about your father's VP pick. I know you've said you don't know who he's picking. That's fine. But one of the things, speaking of draining the swamp, that I don't like is the potential pick of J.D. Vance, because I love J.D. Vance. And we have so many losers in the Senate. I would love your dad to have someone like J.D. Vance at his side, but gosh, we really need some decent senators. We finally have one. I kind of want him to stay there. What say you?
Listen, I wasn't sure where you were going with that one at first because I'm like, wait a minute, JD's like the perfect guy, but no, he is. Listen, I don't think I've been even remotely silent about it. That's been my number one pick from pretty much day one for the VP slot, because it's not just about the VP slot. You watch JD. JD can go on CNN and smack around the opposition like they're little children, which they are. But most of our guys are incapable of doing that. Well, Mr. Whatever your name is, don't you agree? The insurrection of January, they just accept the narrative and then try to fight from that position of weakness. He's able to articulate that position. If anyone's not seen or read Hillbilly Elegy, that's the guy we started fighting for. That's why my father got into this movement, that forgotten man and woman. He understands that. He gets it. And so, yeah, listen, to me, I'd say he's by far our best senator. So I hate pulling him from that. I think we have a chance of getting someone else good in that position as the junior senator from Ohio, and hopefully we'll replace the senior senator of Ohio, Sherrod Brown, who's a big lib. Again, votes with Joe Biden nearly 100% of the time, and we can get Bernie Moreno in there because we need more of those guys in the Senate. But I also look at a J.D. Vance as a generational character. He's someone that can take the movement, meaning America First, MAGA, however you want to look at it, breaking away from establishment conservatism, and actually run with that for 8 years after 4 more years of Trump. You look at the other contenders, I like them, I'm friendly with them, I think they're accomplished, I think they're intelligent. I don't know that they have that gravitas or the desire and the will to go against even the establishment swamp from the conservative side for the future. And for me, it's about the future of this movement. This is the new Republican Party, but the swamp doesn't want that to happen. They're going to fight tooth and nail to bring back the old, there's not really a consequence for losing, so we'll maintain some sort of power and we can be a little bit of controlled opposition and we'll make our money and we'll get on boards and we'll put our friends on boards and we'll have power and get invited to the cool person party. We won't do what's right for the American people. We won't fight for real hardworking blue-collar Americans, but we have an easy existence in DC being, a feckless weakling. So, I get it. You're not wrong at all. But, that would be my first, second, and third choice for VP because I want to continue the movement, and that positions him naturally to do so.
Yeah, that's the choice to make, right? Do you take the superstar out of the Senate and put him right next to you where he probably should be? Or gosh, are we starved for anybody with guts like JD has in the Senate? All right, speaking of VP, I know you have to be enjoying the Biden saga ever since he pooped his pants on stage when your dad curb stomped him last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever that was. Dome has been in the news. Vice President Kamala Harris has no personality. She can't talk. She can't think. It's painful watching her try to function publicly, and they might be stuck with her. This is fantastic.
Well, listen, the machinations of sort of campaign fundraising and FEC rules, like it's sort of hard. It's hard to sort of skip the other person on the ticket, right? And then you combine that with just, Democrats relying 100% on identity politics. Remember, Kamala Harris had less than 1% of the Democrat vote in the primary in 2020. It wasn't like she was popular and that you're putting in a popular person, but, she was the first African-American woman of what, checkbox, like we must put her in there. And then you listen to her speak. And Jesse, I swear, I feel like we have a mole in the Biden-Harris administration, and it happens to be whoever is writing Kamala Harris's speeches. Because I'm like, hey, man, if you put me in there, like if I could morph into like her speechwriter and write a speech, like I could not do a better job exuding incompetence, in written form to give to her to speak. Because it's the word salad it's amazing. Democracy is democracy because of democracy. And without democracy, there would be, Jesse, no democracy. And I'm like, wait a minute. Like, I feel like I'm being punked. And so, it's interesting watching the collapse. I've actually have to applaud my father for his discipline in, just letting it happen. Because, man, I'm sitting there being like, please, like, just can I go attack? Because it's so ridiculous. So we have someone who's either incompetent. I'd have a hard time imagining, I guess probably like any straight white male voting for Kamala Harris. I have a hard time imagining almost any African American man or woman vote. I can't imagine anyone actually voting for it. It's almost impossible, other than those people who are just purely like, I guess, radical leftist identity people, because someone else will be pulling the strings. So it's sort of great to watch. You have a choice between arguably the least likable person in American politics and a vegetable. And it's like, they're not sure. I would probably rather run against her, frankly, but that's just me.
Oh, damn. Yeah, unless you're Willie Brown, what reason do you have to vote for Kamala? Don, thank you so much, my brother. I'll see you in Milwaukee next week, my man.
There are certain immutable facts of life, and those were painfully obvious on that debate stage. And the president just doesn't seem to he hasn't come to grips with it. He's not winning this race. He's more likely, if you just look at the data and talk to people around the country, political people around the country, it's more likely that he'll lose by a landslide than win narrowly.
Ooh. Ouch. Not exactly a vote of confidence. Joining me now, Sean Spicer of the Sean Spicer Show, who's not going to be in Milwaukee next week. I don't want to talk about it. I'm bitter anyway. Sean, okay, let's have a chat. Everyone says Joe Biden's gone. He's going to be...
Listen, the elites are going to Milwaukee. I get it. I'm not an elitist. This is like Joe Biden. I'm blaming the elites. I'm not an elite. You're an elite. I didn't get invited. You're an elite.
That's me. I'm a very elite person. 100% me. All right, Sean. Look, the palace intrigue is bad right now. It is fascinating to watch what a poison pill Kamala Harris is in this entire thing. But Biden is hanging on for now. This can't last, right? It's not going to happen.
There are three things that were happening this week that I think were important. One, House and Senate Democrats are returning to Washington where microphones could get jammed in their face. And we're seeing a little of that today. Number two, the NATO summit, where world leaders and their top aides can leak to the media that he lost a step. He forgot somebody's name. He nodded off. That's high risk, low reward. And number three, what the White House is, I cannot believe, calling a big boy press conference as though it's funny. On Thursday, which is nuts. The idea that after 3 days of intense meetings, you're putting this guy who couldn't, after 12 days of rest, handle a debate. I think that's high risk, low reward. What do I mean? So what's the big thing? On Friday, if anything goes wrong, I think we're going to see a whole another level of panic set in. If Biden is the nominee Friday night, he's it. We're going. It's done. But if he can get through this week, I think there's not even a question in my mind that because he's dug in.
Okay, how much worse could it get for him, though, Sean? Because I don't disagree, obviously, but how much worse could it get? I mean, look, okay, he has to get through a press conference. So let's say his press conference goes bad, which of course it won't go well. It's just a degree of how bad it is. Let's say NATO goes bad, people leaking, but he's not going to be worse than he is now. You have Democrats openly calling for his head. Clearly the guy wants to stay.
So there's two groups that matter right now. In sort of descending order. Number one is the leadership, the Hakeem Jeffries, the Nancy Pelosi's, the Chuck Schumer. He's still got them, at least not saying negative stuff. That's a huge win. The second is the Black Caucus. He had a call with them and the Hispanic Caucus and held them together. That is the base of the Democratic Party, the Democratic coalitions, right? So if you can keep Black men and women on board, you're in good shape. And that's where he's got right now. If he starts losing the head of the CBC coming out or something like that, then he's done. It's over. As long as he can keep that base together, he's okay.
Okay, so I understand why Jill and Hunter would want him to stay. But you've been in the White House. You've been in the halls of power before. I don't understand. I understand the intoxication of power and all those things, but why would Joe want to stay? I mean, look, he's on the back nine. Sean, he doesn't have 5 years left, probably. He definitely doesn't have 10. Everyone with eyes can see that. Why would you want to stay in the most stressful job in the world? Go to the beach. Go to Nantucket. I know he rents a place there all the time. Live out the rest of your days with chocolate ice cream on the beach. Why would Joe want to stay?
Well, first of all, the greatest job in the world is former president. You get a full Secret Service detail. Everybody wants to see you. You have to make no decisions. I think that, to me, like the greatest gig ever is being current vice president or former president. Vice president, you get a pool, big house, no real decisions. President, former president, you get the full detail, the motorcade, everything, without any of the drama or the responsibility. But to your question, and you alluded to it, and this is the thing that's important, is the people around you are addicted to power. Jill, Hunter, Ricchetti, Donilon, Bruce Reed, Anita Dunn. When they leave, when he leaves, they leave. When he leaves, they lose power, and it's over and it's done. So to answer your question, why does Joe stay? Because they want him to. They need him to. And if the people are around you are saying, you can't go, it's too important, there's more work to be done, you're the only one who can stop Donald Trump, you start believing your own spin. And frankly, he is in such a bubble that those are the only people that matter to him. And he's only being given access to people who want him to stay. So if the only thing that you're hearing, if your echo chamber is just people who said it's too important for you to leave, you've got to stay, the health of democracy, the future of the free world, all depends on you, well, then that's what you think. And you alluded to it, but I'll tell you, I said this in the first book I wrote. When I went to resign, I knew that the second that I handed that piece of paper to the President of the United States, that my life would be forever changed. It was over. I couldn't ever go back. You can't just walk back into the White House. And I was a mere staffer. And so I think these folks get it. Once they say he's going and he's gone, he's not the center of the universe. No one cares what they think. Hunter can't grift off him anymore. Jim Biden, his brother, the gig is up. So, and for real this time, because there's no potential run in the future. So they're all invested. You know, Jill just got on the cover of Vogue. That's over. No more beautiful spreads, no more press corps following you and reservations at all the restaurants that everybody wants to have you seen it. You're back to Delaware, and that's it. You're not flying around DC, hobnobbing with all the world leaders and all the thought leaders and get invited to the Aspen Ideas Conference or wherever else they love to hang out. That's, you know, all of the elite events that Jesse Kelly gets to go to. That's it. They're done. And so that's it. DC is a power-centric city, and once these guys give it up, they're empowered to empower him.
Yeah. Why is the media out for him now, Sean? They've covered for him. They have covered for him for years. They're
Great
out
question.
for him now, though, and they are out for him. Why?
That's you know what? You're the first person that's asking that, because I think you're the only honest broker out there that's like, all the rest of them are afraid to ask this question because they lied to him. And it's like a family. And I think Corinne felt that way yesterday. What are you guys doing? We're friends. I used to work at MSNBC. My partner was at CNN. Why are you treating me this way with these tough questions and accountability? It's because they misled them. And that's the thing. Hell, what is hell has no fury. And Jake Tapper did this yesterday. The problem is, once you start attacking the moderators of the debate, once you start misleading the press, they're going to turn on you because their credibility has been called. They were like, we covered for you. We read your talking points. We said that this was normal, that everything was okay. And then you betrayed us and you lied to us. So that's why they turned on him.
You wrote about Joe Biden/Dome's tax plan. What is their tax plan?
So there's what Joe Biden says the tax plan is, and there's his actual budget. His actual budget would decrease real GDP by like 2% each year, result in real wage losses. And that's on top of the 5% wage cut that the average earner has experienced since the start of his presidency. And then there's also what he says he'll do. You know, Joe Biden, during that debate, if you actually could pay attention past the slack-jawed, terrifying, vacant glare, what he actually said was, we could just round up all the billionaires and tax them, and we can fund childcare, nursery schools, elder care. Jesse, all the billionaires in the US together own $5.5 trillion. Even if you took them Soviet style and threw them in the gulag, we're running annual $2 trillion deficits. It would cover the deficit for the next 2.5 years. And then what? That's not sustainable. We don't have a taxation problem. We have a spending problem. And that's why Joe Biden's tax plan is so scary. It doesn't actually create any new revenue streams. And there's a point where tax cuts, once you start increasing taxes, you start decreasing the overall revenue, right? With the Laffer curve. And it's why corporate tax revenue has never been higher. And that's because of the Trump tax cut, because it spurred onshoring international investment and domestic growth of the economy. Joe Biden wants to do the opposite. And it's all in the name of equality, Jesse. It's better to bring in less tax revenue if it means that everyone gets punished more.
Yeah. Oh, sounds a lot like, what's that word? Communism to me. All right, Tiana, we have to talk about Joe Biden. Is he staying? Is he going? Everyone knows where I stand. I've been telling people for 2 years I think they're going to kick his old butt out the back door. But everyone has an opinion, and all this palace intrigue is just fantastic to me. What say you?
So, practically speaking, the only people that have the actual power to remove Joe Biden are the delegates. So for as much as, Nancy Pelosi and Barack Obama have all been leaking and really letting all of their, hagiographers here in DC telegraph that they really don't want him to be the nominee. They know he's getting clobbered in the polls. There's not anything they can do. And I think they're taking the wrong approach. Look, Joe Biden has a money issue. His entire family has a money issue. This is a man that's refinanced every single home he's owned every 17 months. His son still owes like $3 million in back alimony. That's beyond all the legal bills because he's facing another felony trial, right? Jim Biden, all the Biden brothers, Val Biden, Owens, Jill Biden, his kids, his grandkids, they all need cash. So outside of the delegates deciding there's a stipulation in the DNC code of conduct and in their rule book where they can vote their conscience. So if they all decide to vote for someone else, they can. But the other issue is that money legally can only go to Kamala Harris. And that's if Joe Biden allows it. If Joe Biden decided to withdraw and say, I'm giving all the money back to donors, Kamala Harris no longer has access to that war chest. And it's $250 billion. The idea, this Aaron Sorkin West Wing fantasy that they're going to have a, round robin speed dating style primary at the convention, it's just not born in reality. And even if it were, you would have the entire Congressional Black Caucus and half of the state delegates say, why are you trying to leapfrog the first Black, Asian, female vice president with, Pete Buttigieg or Gretchen Whitmer? And we've all seen the polling of Harris versus Trump. And frankly, over time, it looks even worse than the polling of Biden versus Trump.
Man, I am so enjoying this entire thing. Tiana, thank you so much. I appreciate you. It's wonderful drama. Look, for us political people, let's be honest. It's as good as it gets.
We're all encouraging him to make that decision because time is running short.
He has made the decision. He has said firmly this week he is going to run. Do you want him to run?
I want him to do whatever he decides to do. And that's the way it is. Whatever he decides, we go with. And I've said to everyone, let's just hold off. Whatever you're thinking, either tell somebody privately, but you don't have to put that out on the table until we see how we go this week.
I love that conversation so much. I can't wait to talk to Buck about that conversation. I had a similar conversation with my youngest son. He's a swimmer. And I asked him 2 days ago, woke up that morning and I asked him, I said, you want to go out there, get some laps in, make sure you're getting yourself ready for the season? And he said, man, I'm not sure, kind of tired, slept in a little bit this morning. I said, do you think you should maybe get some laps in, get ready for the season? I know you haven't decided yet, but do you think it would be a good idea? That's what Nancy's saying. Joining me now, my friend, obviously doesn't need any intro, host of the great Clay and Buck's show, biggest radio show in the country, Buck Sexton. Buck, Buddy, I know you say he's staying and I say he's going, and we've had this conversation a million times, but there are some very, very, very powerful people getting really public about all this thing. What say you?
Jesse. You know, there are many people who in the last few days have been emailing me and they were saying, Buck, I'm so sorry I doubted you. I don't know why it would ever even occur to me to think that I shouldn't be on the Buck train, that I shouldn't be picking a plot on Buck Island, as it has become known on the show, where I have been saying without fail, do you know that after the debate, Jesse, I doubled down on radio and said Joe Biden is going to be the nominee. And it's because I understand a few things. One, the machinery and the possibilities. Two, I know the mindset of Joe Biden himself. Joe Biden is a sociopathic narcissist. The moment that he's not running, him and his entire family of losers are nothing. And he knows that. And he doesn't have much time left. The most important thing that Nancy Pelosi said in that, and I do agree with you, although what your analogy about your son and swimming, it's as though you're saying, hey, buddy, do you want to go swimming? And your son is looking in the eyes and going, I'm not going swimming. And then you're like, hey, buddy, but do you want to go swimming? Like, that's what's actually happening here, because they can't make him not run. This is, people keep acting like, oh, he has said I'm running. He has no incentive not to run. So why wouldn't he run?
Well, okay, we'll set that aside because we don't have to argue about that again, because there's an aspect of this that I find very, very fascinating. Watch this from Michael Bennett. Here's Senator Bennett from this morning.
You, Senator John Tester, and Senator Sherrod Brown all said during that lunch that you don't think President Biden can win in 2024. Is that true?
Well, it's true that I said that. And I did say that behind closed doors. And you guys and others asked whether I had said it. And that is what I said. So I figured I should come here and say it publicly. Donald Trump is on track, I think, to win this election and maybe win it by a landslide and take with him the Senate and the House.
Okay, let's talk about the power dynamics here, Buck, because it's one thing, we're friends. It's one thing if I have an axe to grind with you, which I don't have any axe to grind with you. It's one thing for me to pull you aside, shoot you a text. Hey, Buck, I really have a problem with this. That's no big deal. You and I would work it out. If I go on my radio show tonight, right here on The First tonight, or do anything publicly and say, that Buck's a piece of crap, well, now we've got a problem. They're coming at him publicly, Buck. So if he stays, how do you put Humpty Dumpty back together again?
I think it's the nature of politics these days that people are so lacking in consistencies and principle that almost no one expects consistency or principle. And this is something you've seen on the Republican side, something you see on the Democrat side. Here's how I see it on the coming at Biden publicly right now. I think they're doing this because they're going on the record now so that later on, if, let's say, Biden gets smoked against Trump, if he stays in as I think he does, or as I think he will, and he gets absolutely crushed, they can say, see, I told you guys, I said replace him. But what they're not going to say then is what I think is going to happen in about 3 weeks, which is they're going to say, Trump is too much of a threat to democracy. Biden will be a good steward, whether he lasts 6 months or 4 years in office going forward. So, the threat against democracy is too big. Joe Biden has to be the guy for now. So I think that, basically it's like they're calling the big game and they're going on record. Gee, I know somebody who does this, going on record publicly saying that both sides will win. And then whoever wins, they say, see, I told you that's what's going to happen. This will all be forgotten. This will all become an absurdity. But the biggest thing for me with all this is, why isn't it just Kamala? Like George Clooney wrote this letter like, oh, I'm George Clooney, like I'm important. He wrote this letter that Joe Biden should step down. And what they do is they open it up to the deep Democrat bench. You have a dementia patient as a president. You have a vice president whose job is to be ready to take over for a dementia patient president. So why aren't they just saying it should be Kamala? The only reason there's this what do we do is because I think they recognize Dementia Joe has a better shot against Trump than DEI Kamala. And that's the truth. That's what no one's saying out loud, but is obvious from everything that they're saying on the in the media and on the news channels.
She really is the ultimate poison pill that they accidentally chose that's going to end up protecting Joe's nomination if he keeps the nomination. Okay, but there's a conversation you and I had one time in person, although I know you won't mind me sharing this publicly, especially since I already have on the radio before. We were hanging out during the midterms that were supposed to be that red wave, and it didn't turn out to be a red wave. And you and me were licking our wounds, huddling in the corner, and we're talking. And what we came up with was simply this. The country's never as far to the right as you would like or as I would like. We convince ourselves it is, and there's going to be a red wave, and I see how crazy Democrats are, and then that doesn't really materialize. I see a lot of preemptive celebration here on the year of our Lord 2024, July 10th. I'm not so sure that I see some red wave because every time I see that, it doesn't come.
I agree. I said this actually earlier today on radio. I don't know how Biden can still win, but I know he can still win, and everyone needs to hear that. I mean, if you ask me, explain that process other than just like they cheat, right? But explain that process in a meaningful way. I'm not capable of doing it right now, but I know that it is possible, and I know it's possible because of what we've seen in the past. And that's why there is, I think, a little bit of exuberance, overconfidence on the Republican side in this moment. I think that you're going to see things get tighter. Remember, it only has to get tighter in a few states. As people, it doesn't matter. Trump being up, 15 in North Carolina, it's not that. It's like 8 or 10. But he was always going to win North Carolina. Is he going to maintain the leads that I do believe he currently has, but it doesn't matter yet, in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania? And I think that's the whole thing. I mean, I think the Democrats are just thinking if they run the table in those states and they defend their other territories, which they probably can do even with a quasi, with it person. I don't know how best to describe Joe Biden these days, dementia patient. Then I think they believe they can still win. So it is going to be closer than people realize. And also you're going to have a lot of Democrats who do the distancing thing if they have to, in places that we should just be running the table. They're going to say, oh, well, I'm not a Biden Democrat. I'm a Pennsylvania Union Democrat, or I'm a, whatever. You get what I'm saying. So yeah, I'm not cheering for this too early. And I would just say, even Joe Biden muttering gibberish when he should have a blanket on his knees, feeding pigeons in the park, is going to get 49% of the vote, everybody. That's the truth. Just mark he's going to get 49%. He might get more than that, but you could push him out on the stage election night, drooling on himself and muttering nonsense. 49% of the electorate's going to vote for that clown instead of Donald Trump. Just remember I said it.